My parents took the emergency key I gave them, moved into my apartment while I was at work, gave themselves my bedroom, and expected me to thank them for making me homeless in my own home. They painted over my walls, they replaced my furniture, they packed my 200 books into boxes and left them in the public hallway like garbage. And when I walked through my own front door, my mother smiled and said 5 words that changed everything. You can sleep on the couch. My name is Kira Appleton. I'm 32 years old and I paid $2,100 a month for that apartment. Every single dollar from my own pocket. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I didn't beg them to leave. I made one phone call, and by the next morning they had nowhere to go. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. There's a specific sound that haunts me to this day, the scrape of furniture being dragged across hardwood floors. Not by movers I hired, not by friends helping me rearrange, by my own parents, in my own apartment while I was at work. I gave them a key for emergencies. What I found when I came home early that Friday wasn't an emergency response. It was an invasion. My name is Kira Appleton. I'm 32 years old, and I work as a senior data analyst in Denver. For 6 years, I built my independence brick by brick. One afternoon, my parents tried to tear it all down with a smile and 5 words. We're moving in, sweetie. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I made one phone call. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. Let me take you back to before everything fell apart. My apartment sat on the 3rd floor of a red brick building in Capitol Hill, one of Denver's oldest neighborhoods. 650 square feet of space that I'd transformed into something that felt like breathing. A wall of books, 203 to be exact, lined the space between my bedroom door and the kitchen. My desk faced the window overlooking Cheeseman Park, where every morning I'd watch joggers loop the path while I drank my coffee. I paid $2,100 a month for that place. Every single dollar came from my own account. That number might sound like a lot, and honestly, it was. But after 6 years of climbing from entry-level analyst to senior position, after watching my salary grow from $42,000 to $87,000, that rent check represented something more than money. It represented proof. Proof that the girl who left Pueblo, Colorado with $800 and a second-hand Honda could build a life on her own terms. My morning routine was sacred. Wake at 6. French press coffee. The good stuff, not the instant garbage I survived on in my 20s. 30 minutes of reading before the chaos of work emails began. Then the 15-minute walk to the office, past the coffee shops and yoga studios that made Capitol Hill feel like a village inside a city. I'd earned that routine. I'd earned that apartment. I'd earned the right to arrange my books alphabetically by author and leave my running shoes by the door and eat cereal for dinner if I wanted to. For the first time in my life, I had a space that was completely, entirely mine. I just didn't realize how quickly someone could try to take that away. The phone call came 3 weeks before everything changed. It was a Tuesday evening. I was reviewing quarterly reports when my mother's name lit up my screen. I almost let it go to voicemail. I had a deadline. But guilt won, the way it always did. Hi, Mom. Kira, honey, are you eating enough? You sound tired. I wasn't tired. I was focused. But explaining the difference to my mother was like explaining color to someone who only saw in black and white. I'm fine, Mom. Just working. Always working. You know, your brother manages to have a life and a career. Brandon just made junior partner at his firm. Did I tell you? She had, 4 times. That's great for him. And he bought that beautiful house in Cherry Creek. 4 bedrooms. Sarah's already talking about nurseries. My mother's voice carried that particular tone, the one that made comparisons sound like concern. Meanwhile, you're still renting, throwing money away every month. When are you going to settle down? I closed my laptop. This conversation required my full attention, if only to survive it. Mom, I have an emergency fund. 6 months of expenses saved. My 401k is... Brandon bought his house at 28. You're 32, Kira. 32 and alone in a rental. I swallowed the response I wanted to give. I'd learned years ago that arguing with my mother was like arguing with weather. You couldn't win, you could only wait for it to pass. I know, Mom. We just worry about you, honey. A girl alone in the city. Who's going to take care of you? Before I could answer, she dropped it casually, like mentioning the weather. Oh, by the way, your father and I sold the house, the Pueblo house, finally closed last week. The key situation started 8 months before that phone call. My parents had driven up from Pueblo for my birthday, a 4-hour trip they made twice a year, always with commentary about Denver traffic and parking costs. We'd had dinner at a mid-range Italian place, and afterward, my mother had walked through my apartment like a health inspector, running her finger along surfaces. You should let me come up more often, she said. Help you keep this place organized. It is organized, Mom. Organized for you, maybe. She picked up a stack of books I'd left on the coffee table. What if we came to visit and you were stuck at work? We'd be standing in the hallway like strangers. My father nodded from the couch, backing her up the way he always did. Silent support for whatever my mother decided. I don't know, Mom. It's really just for emergencies. Exactly. Emergencies. What if something happened to you? What if you fell in the shower and couldn't get to your phone? We'd have no way to help. The guilt landed exactly where she aimed it. I made a copy of my key the next day. Only for emergencies, I said when I handed it over. Real emergencies. Of course, honey. What else would we use it for? Over the following months, I came home 4 times to find things slightly rearranged. Dishes I'd left in the sink, washed and put away wrong. My mail stacked in a different order. Once, my closet had been reorganized by color instead of season. I was just tidying up, my mother said when I called. You should be grateful. I let it go. It was just cleaning. It wasn't worth the fight. I should have recognized the pattern. I should have changed the locks. The dinner at Brandon's house last month should have warned me. My brother lived in Cherry Creek, in a 4-bedroom colonial that cost more than I'd earn in a decade. His wife, Sarah, was a dentist with her own practice. Together, they represented everything my parents considered success. Married, homeowners, professionally established, already discussing children. I represented the question mark. Brandon's been promoted to junior partner, my mother announced to our aunt and uncle over video call, her phone angled to capture my brother's modest shrug. The youngest in his firm's history. Everyone applauded. I clapped too, genuinely happy for him. Brandon worked hard. He deserved recognition. And Kira, my mother continued, the phone swinging briefly toward me, is still doing her computer thing. I got a 12% raise last quarter, I offered. And I'm leading the analytics team for our biggest client. My mother nodded, already turning back to Brandon. Sarah, tell everyone about the nursery plans. That was the pattern. Brandon's achievements were celebrated, analyzed, shared with extended family like press releases. Mine were acknowledged with the enthusiasm of reading a grocery list. After dinner, I found Brandon in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher. You know how Mom is, he said when I mentioned the video call. She doesn't mean anything by it. I know. She just worries about you. We all do. I'm fine, Brandon. I have a good job, a nice apartment, but you're alone. He said it gently, like he was delivering difficult news. That's what scares her. I didn't argue. There was no point. But all of that, the comparisons, the worry, the subtle dismissals, was just the prelude. What happened the following Friday changed everything. Friday, March 15th. 3:47 in the afternoon. I remember the exact time because I'd checked my phone in the elevator, feeling pleased with myself. My team had finished the Henderson account analysis 2 days ahead of deadline, and my manager had sent me home early as a reward. I was already planning my evening, take-out Thai food, a glass of wine, maybe starting that novel I'd been putting off. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Paint. Fresh paint, sharp and chemical, seeping under my door. I stood in the hallway for a full 10 seconds, key in hand, trying to make sense of it. Had maintenance come by? Had there been a leak I didn't know about? I opened the door. Country music, the twangy kind my mother loved and I'd always hated, drifted from a portable radio I didn't own. My living room walls, which I'd carefully painted sage green when I moved in, were now beige. Builder beige. The color of waiting rooms and rental properties that didn't care about character. My couch, the mid-century modern piece I'd saved 6 months to buy, had been shoved into the corner. In its place sat a brown leather sectional I recognized from my parents' house in Pueblo. What the? I walked further in, my heart pounding. The kitchen counter held unfamiliar appliances, a bread maker, a coffee percolator, a stand mixer in harvest gold. My sleek French press was nowhere in sight. The hallway stopped me cold. 12 cardboard boxes, stacked against the wall. I recognized the handwriting on the labels, my mother's neat script. Kira's books, Kira's desk items, Kira's bedroom misc. My bedroom. I pushed open the door and found my parents' king-size bed where my queen had been, their dresser, their nightstands, their reading lamps, my things, my bed, my furniture, my life, had been packed into boxes and stacked in the hallway like items waiting for a garage sale. 3 more boxes sat outside my apartment door, in the public hallway where anyone could take them. My 203 books, boxed up like trash. Surprise! My mother emerged from the bathroom, her hair wrapped in one of my towels, wearing a robe I'd never seen before. She smiled like she was revealing a birthday present. "You're home early. We wanted to have everything set up before you got back." I couldn't form words. My mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Mom, what is this? Isn't it wonderful?" She spread her arms, gesturing at the beige walls, the leather furniture, the complete erasure of everything I'd built. "We're moving in. Your father and I talked about it, and it just makes so much sense." My father appeared from the bedroom, my bedroom, holding a power drill. The closet rod was loose. I fixed it. "Mom." I forced my voice to stay level. "You didn't ask me." "Ask you what, honey?" "If you could move in, if you could—" I gestured helplessly at the chaos around me. "If you could throw out my furniture and paint my walls and pack up my things." My mother's smile flickered, just slightly. "We didn't throw anything out. It's all in boxes. And the walls needed freshening up anyway. That green was so dark." "I chose that green." "Well, now it's a nice neutral, much better for resale value." "I rent this apartment, Mom. I'm not selling it." She waved her hand dismissively. "You know what I mean. Besides, this makes so much more sense. We sold the house, you knew that, and paying rent somewhere else when our daughter has all this space, it's wasteful. This is a 1-bedroom apartment. And we're family." She said it like the word solved everything. "You can sleep on the couch. I already made it up nice for you. See?" She pointed to my corner-shoved couch, now dressed with sheets and a thin blanket. My couch. In my apartment. That I paid for. "You can sleep on the couch." I stood in the center of what used to be my living room and felt the walls closing in. The math was simple, brutal. If I accepted this, if I nodded and smiled and became the grateful daughter they expected, I would lose everything I'd spent 6 years building. Not just the apartment, not just the furniture, but the person I'd become. I would wake up every morning on a couch in my own home. I would ask permission to use my own bathroom. I would eat meals I didn't choose, keep hours I didn't set, explain every phone call and justify every purchase. I would become 22 again, fresh out of college, living under their roof and their rules. 6 years ago, I'd left Pueblo with $800 and a promise to myself. I would never again live a life that someone else controlled. I'd kept that promise through lean years and lonely nights, through jobs that didn't appreciate me and relationships that didn't work out. I'd kept it because the alternative, dependence, obligation, the slow erosion of self, was worse than any struggle. And now my parents stood in my apartment smiling, waiting for me to thank them for taking it all away. My mother watched me with that patient expression she used when she knew she'd won. My father had already gone back to fixing the closet rod, the matter settled in his mind. They expected me to fold. I always had before. But something had shifted. Something in me had finally, irreversibly broken. Or maybe it had finally healed. I tried reason first. I owed myself that much. The attempt to solve this like adults. Mom, I kept my voice steady. This is my apartment. I'm the one on the lease. And? She arranged throw pillows on the leather sectional, her throw pillows, brought from Pueblo. You're our daughter. What's yours is ours. That's not how it works. It's how family works. You just sold your house for $285,000. The number felt important, concrete. You could rent a beautiful place anywhere in Denver. My mother's expression shifted, that subtle hardening around the eyes that preceded every guilt trip. That money is for our retirement, for emergencies. You want us to spend our nest egg on rent when our own daughter has room for us? I don't have room. This is a one-bedroom apartment. You have a couch. The couch is for sitting, not for living. My father emerged from the bedroom, drawn by our raised voices. What's going on? Your daughter is being selfish. My mother crossed her arms. After everything we've done for her. I'm not being selfish. I'm asking to be consulted about my own home. Consulted? My father's voice carried that disappointed weight I'd been trained since childhood to fear. We're your parents, Kira. We don't need to ask permission. Yes, you do. The words hung in the air, foreign and sharp. I'd never said them before, not to my parents, not about anything that mattered. My mother's face went through several expressions: shock, hurt, and finally, that familiar righteous anger. After everything we sacrificed for you, the dance lessons, the college tuition, the car we bought you for graduation, and this is how you repay us? She was loading the guilt cannon. I knew the pattern. I'd been dodging it my whole life. This time, I didn't dodge. My mother started crying. Not loud, dramatic sobs. She was too skilled for that. These were quiet tears, the kind that made you feel like a monster for causing them. She dabbed at her eyes with the sleeve of her robe, her voice breaking at strategic intervals. I carried you for 9 months. I gave up my career to raise you. I sat up with you when you were sick, drove you to every practice, every recital, every... She paused for a shaky breath. And now you treat me like a stranger, like I need an appointment to see my own daughter. The guilt rose in my chest, automatic and familiar. 20 years of conditioning made me want to apologize, to take it back, to smooth things over. But I thought about my books, boxed up in the hallway, my walls painted over, my bed replaced. Mom, I'm not saying you can't visit. I'm saying you can't move in without asking. What's the difference? We're family. Family doesn't have boundaries. Everyone has boundaries. Grandma Ruth is going to be heartbroken when she hears about this. My mother's tears dried remarkably fast. The whole family will know how you treated us. Your aunts, your uncles, your cousins, they'll all know that Kira Appleton threw her parents out on the street. I'm not throwing you anywhere. You have money. You have options. We have a daughter who should want us here. My father put his hand on my mother's shoulder, united front. Your mother's right, Kira. Think about what you're saying. Think about how this looks. I thought about it. And then I thought about the lease agreement in my filing box. Section 12.3, Early Termination Clause. I'd read it 3 times before signing, the way I read everything. I had options too. I took a breath, then another. My mother watched me with that patient, victorious expression, the one she wore when she knew I was about to cave. She'd seen it 100 times before. The slight drop of my shoulders, the apologetic tilt of my head, the surrender. Not today. Okay, I said quietly. I need some air. I'm going to take a walk. My mother's smile bloomed. Good idea, honey. Clear your head. When you come back, I'll have dinner started. I brought my pot roast recipe. You always loved that. I hated her pot roast. I'd told her that at least a dozen times over the years. She'd never once heard me. Sure, Mom. I picked up my purse from the kitchen counter. They hadn't moved that at least. Then I walked to the corner where they'd stacked my boxed belongings and found the one labeled Kira's desk items. Inside, beneath a layer of office supplies and old birthday cards, was my filing folder. What are you looking for? My mother's voice had an edge now. Just some work papers. I pulled out the folder, slipped it into my purse, and grabbed my laptop bag from where it leaned against the wall. Then I walked to the door. Kira, my father's voice stopped me. Don't do anything rash. I looked back at them, my parents, standing in my apartment, surrounded by their furniture, their paint, their absolute certainty that they had the right to be there. I'm just taking a walk, Dad. I closed the door behind me and walked to the elevator. My hands weren't shaking. My heart wasn't racing. I felt something I hadn't expected. Calm. Complete crystalline calm. In my purse, the lease agreement waited. Section 12.3, Early Termination. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Marcus Webb's number. Marcus picked up on the second ring. Highland Property Management, this is Marcus. Hi, Marcus, it's Kira Appleton, Unit 4B. Hey, Kira. His voice was warm, familiar. We'd chatted dozens of times over the years about the building's quirks, the best takeout in the neighborhood, the time a pipe burst on the fourth floor, and he'd worked until midnight to fix it. Everything okay? I was standing on the sidewalk outside my building, watching the late afternoon sun paint the brick facades gold. Everything was not okay. Everything was the opposite of okay. I need to invoke the early termination clause. Section 12.3. A pause. That's sudden. You sure about this? I'm sure. Okay. I heard papers shuffling. Let me pull up your file. Section 12.3 requires 30 days' notice or a penalty equal to 1 month's rent. Since you're asking for immediate termination, that would be $2,100 deducted from your security deposit. That's fine. You'll need to vacate within 72 hours of the termination date. I can process the paperwork today if you want. Have everything official by 5. I checked my watch. 4:12. Please do that, Marcus. Kira. He hesitated. Is everything all right? You've been a great tenant. If there's something wrong with the unit, maybe we can work something out. The unit's fine. It's a personal matter. Understood. Professional again, respecting the boundary. I'll email you the confirmation as soon as it's processed. You'll need to return your keys by Monday at 5. I'll be out tonight. Another pause. Tonight? That's fast. I know. I hung up and immediately texted Elena. Can I crash at your place for a few days? Long story. Her response came in 30 seconds. Doors open, wine's ready, get here, 4 minutes and 43 seconds. That's how long the call lasted. That's how long it took to change everything. I returned to the apartment at 5:30 with 2 collapsed moving boxes under my arm. My mother looked up from the stove where she was browning meat in her Dutch oven. The smell of pot roast filled the space, aggressively domestic. There you are. I was starting to worry. Dinner will be ready in an hour. I didn't respond. I walked past her, past my father watching the evening news on a television I didn't own, and went straight to the stack of boxes in the hallway. Kira, what are you doing? I opened the box labeled Kira's desk items and pulled out my external hard drive, my passport, my birth certificate. Into my laptop bag they went. Kira. The box labeled Kira's bedroom. Mace C held my jewelry box, my grandmother's watch, the photo album from college. I took those too. Kira, answer me. I walked to the 3 boxes sitting in the public hallway, the ones containing my books, and began stacking them on a small hand truck I'd borrowed from the building's storage room. My mother followed me into the hall. Where are you taking those? What is happening? I have some things to take care of. What things? Dinner is almost ready. Your father and I went to all this trouble. I didn't ask you to. Her face went through that familiar sequence: confusion, hurt, anger. You're being ridiculous. Put those boxes back and come eat with your family. I loaded the last box onto the hand truck. My books, 203 of them, 8 years of collecting, of finding treasures in used bookstores and library sales. She'd packed them up like they were nothing. I have to go, Mom. Go where? I didn't answer. I pushed the hand truck toward the elevator, my laptop bag over my shoulder, my life's most important documents pressed against my hip. Behind me, my mother called out, "Kira Appleton, you come back here right now." I didn't look back. Elena's apartment in Wash Park smelled like lavender and safety. She opened the door before I could knock, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside without a word. The hand truck with my books waited in her parking spot. She'd help me bring them up later. For now, she guided me to her couch and pressed a glass of red wine into my hands. Okay. She sat cross-legged facing me, her own wine untouched. Tell me everything. I told her. The paint, the furniture, the boxes in the hallway. My mother's smile, my father's drill, the couch they expected me to sleep on. Elena's expression darkened with every detail. They moved in without asking, she said when I finished. They threw out your stuff, and they have $285,000 in the bank. They said it's for retirement. Retirement? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Kira, that's not family. That's an invasion. That's... She stopped, shook her head. That's exactly what my mother did. I'd known Elena for 4 years, but she rarely talked about her family. I knew there'd been a falling out. I knew she hadn't spoken to her mother in 5 years. I'd never asked for details. She showed up at my first apartment after college, Elena said quietly. Moved herself in while I was at work. Said I owed her for raising me. I spent 8 months sleeping on an air mattress in my own living room before I finally... She took a breath. Before I finally understood that guilt isn't love, and obligation isn't family. My mom said I'm being selfish. Your mom is gaslighting you. Elena leaned forward. You're not selfish for wanting your own space. You're not ungrateful for having boundaries. You're not a bad daughter for refusing to be controlled. For the first time since walking into my transformed apartment, I felt something loosen in my chest. I terminated my lease. Elena's eyes widened. You what? My phone buzzed at exactly 8:47. The email from Highland Property Management sat at the top of my inbox, its subject line clinical and final, lease termination confirmation, Unit 4B, Capitol Hill. I opened it with Elena reading over my shoulder. Dear Ms. Appleton, this email confirms the termination of your lease agreement for Unit 4B at Highland Apartments, effective immediately per Section 12.3 of your rental agreement. The early termination penalty of $2,100 has been deducted from your security deposit of $4,200. The remaining balance of $2,100 will be refunded within 30 business days. Please vacate the premises by Monday, March 18th at 5:00 p.m. and return all keys to the property management office. Thank you for your tenancy. We wish you well in your future endeavors. Best regards, Marcus Webb. Property Manager, Highland Apartments. I read it 3 times, then I screenshot it and saved it to my cloud storage. Holy shit, Elena breathed. You actually did it. I did it? Your parents are going to lose their minds. They're going to have to find their own apartment. I set my phone down, feeling the weight of the decision settle into my bones. They have the money. They just didn't want to spend it. When are you going to tell them? I thought about the family gathering scheduled for Sunday. The one at Brandon's house, where my mother planned to announce their wonderful new living situation. 18 relatives, my grandmother, my aunts and uncles and cousins. My mother wanted an audience for her triumph. Fine, she could have one. Sunday, I said. I'll tell them Sunday. Elena raised her wine glass. To boundaries. I clinked my glass against hers. To boundaries. The wine tasted like freedom. If you're watching this far, you probably know exactly how this feels. That moment when someone crosses a line and expects you to just accept it because they're family. Drop a comment below. Have you ever had to set a boundary with someone you love? And don't forget to subscribe if you want to see what happened next. Trust me, the family gathering is where everything changed. Saturday passed in a strange, suspended calm. I stayed at Elena's apartment, ignoring my phone as it lit up with increasingly frantic messages from my mother. Where are you? Dinner got cold. Kira, this isn't funny, call me back. Your father is worried sick. Is this how you treat us? I don't understand why you're being so dramatic. We can talk about this like adults. 7 missed calls, 12 text messages. Each one assumed I would eventually apologize, eventually return, eventually fall back into the role they'd assigned me. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I spent Saturday apartment hunting. The Denver rental market was brutal. I knew that. But I also knew what I needed. Something small. Something affordable, something mine. I found it in Rhino, the arts district north of downtown. A studio apartment, 500 square feet, with exposed brick walls and a window that faced a mural of wildflowers. $1,800 a month, available immediately. I filled out the application online. I paid the deposit with my credit card. By 4 in the afternoon, I had a signed lease for a new apartment starting Tuesday. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Brandon. Mom says you disappeared. She's freaking out. What's going on? I considered not answering. But Brandon wasn't the enemy. He was just caught in the middle, the way he'd always been. I'm fine. I'll be at the family thing tomorrow. She says you took boxes and left. She's crying. She moved into my apartment without asking, Brandon. She packed up my stuff and expected me to sleep on the couch. A long pause, then, she said you agreed to it. I didn't. Another pause. Okay. We'll talk tomorrow. Tomorrow. The word felt like a countdown. Brandon called that evening. I was sitting on Elena's balcony, watching the sunset paint the mountains pink, when his name appeared on my screen. I let it ring twice before answering. Hey. Kira. His voice was careful, the way it got when he was trying to mediate. I talked to Mom. And? She's really upset. She says you just walked out, that you took your stuff and left without explaining anything. Did she tell you what she did first? She said they moved in to help you, that you've been struggling and they wanted to be there for you. I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. Struggling? Brandon, I make $87,000 a year. I have 6 months of expenses saved. I got promoted twice in 3 years. In what universe am I struggling? Silence. She said you couldn't afford your apartment, that you were barely making rent. My rent is $2,100. I could afford twice that if I wanted to. Did she mention that she painted over my walls? That she threw my furniture in the corner and put her bed in my bedroom? That she packed my books into boxes and left them in the public hallway? More silence. She didn't mention that part. No, she wouldn't. I heard him exhale. Look, I'm not taking sides, but she's your mother. And tomorrow, the whole family is going to be at my house, and she's planning to announce that she and Dad are living with you now. If you're going to say something, maybe what? Maybe I should just go along with it, smile and nod while she tells everyone how grateful I am. I'm just saying, maybe talk to her privately first, before it becomes a whole thing. It's already a whole thing, Brandon. She made it a thing when she moved into my apartment without asking. He didn't have an answer for that. Sunday, 2 in the afternoon, Brandon's house in Cherry Creek. I parked on the street 3 houses down and sat in my car for a full 5 minutes before going in. Through the front windows, I could see people moving, gathering, the familiar shapes of relatives I'd known my whole life. 18 people. That's what Brandon had said. My grandmother Ruth, who was 78 and still sharp as a tack. My aunts Diane and Patricia. My uncle Robert. 6 cousins ranging from 19 to 40. Brandon and Sarah. And, of course, my parents. My mother had chosen this audience carefully. A family gathering was sacred ground. a place where disagreements were smoothed over, where unity was performed, where anyone who disrupted the peace became the villain. She expected me to play my role, the grateful daughter, the lucky girl whose parents loved her so much they'd moved 4 hours to be close to her. I checked my phone one more time. The screenshot of Marcus's email was saved, ready to be shown. The lease termination confirmation, the timestamp, the proof. I got out of the car. The front door was unlocked, and the sound of conversation hit me as soon as I stepped inside. Laughter, the clink of glasses, the smell of Brandon's famous barbecue. Kira! My cousin Michelle spotted me first, pulling me into a hug. We were wondering when you'd show up. Your mom's been talking about you all afternoon. I bet she had. I moved through the crowd, accepting hugs and kisses on the cheek, making small talk about work and whether the Broncos had a chance this season. Normal, familiar, the calm before everything changed. And then I saw my mother standing in the center of the living room, waiting for me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. There she is! My mother's voice cut through the room, bright and performative. She crossed to me in 3 quick steps and pulled me into a hug that felt more like a claim than an embrace. Everyone, Kira's here! She kept one arm around my shoulders, turning us to face the assembled relatives. We have some wonderful news to share. The room quieted. 18 faces turned toward us. My grandmother Ruth sat in the corner armchair, watching with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. As most of you know, my mother continued, Douglas and I sold our house in Pueblo last month. 32 years in that home, but it was time for a change. She paused for effect. And we're so blessed that our daughter, our wonderful, generous daughter, has opened her home to us. Murmurs of approval rippled through the room. We've moved in with Kira in Denver. She has a lovely apartment in Capitol Hill, and she insisted we stay with her. Isn't that right, honey? She squeezed my shoulder. A warning. Aunt Diane clasped her hands together. Oh, that's so sweet. Kira, you're such a good daughter. Uncle Robert nodded. Family taking care of family. That's how it should be. Cousin Tyler raised his glass. To Kira, the best daughter in the Appleton family. I stood frozen as relatives toasted me, their faces warm with approval for a generosity I'd never offered. My mother beamed beside me, her victory complete. She even gave us her bedroom, my mother added. Can you imagine? She's sleeping on the couch so we can be comfortable. That's the kind of daughter we raised. Grandma Ruth's eyes found mine across the room. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't toasting. She was watching, waiting, reading something in my face that no one else seemed to see. My mother squeezed my shoulder again. Say something, honey. Don't be shy. The room waited. 18 people, wine glasses raised, smiles expectant. My mother's arm around my shoulders like a vice. My father standing behind her, nodding along, already accepting the applause for their wonderful family values. Kira. My mother's voice dropped to a whisper only I could hear. Don't you dare embarrass me. I thought about all the times I'd swallowed my words, all the dinners where I'd smiled through comparisons to Brandon, all the phone calls where I'd said, yes, Mom, and I know, Mom, and you're right, Mom, because fighting was exhausting and peace was easier. I thought about my books in boxes, my walls painted over, my bed replaced. I thought about the couch. Kira? Aunt Diane's smile faltered slightly. Are you okay, sweetie? You look pale. She's just overwhelmed, my mother said quickly. It's been an emotional few days, having her parents so close, finally being able to take care of us. I didn't agree to this. The words came out quiet, but in the sudden silence they carried. My mother laughed, high and nervous. What are you talking about? Of course you did. I didn't. I came home Friday and found you'd already moved in. You painted my walls. You replaced my furniture. You packed my belongings into boxes. The room had gone very still. Kira. My mother's grip on my shoulder tightened painfully. We can talk about this later. In private. You wanted to make this announcement in front of everyone. I stepped out of her grip. So let's talk about it in front of everyone. I looked around the room, at my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, my grandmother. At Brandon, standing by the kitchen doorway, his face unreadable. I have something to say. Thank you all for being here. I kept my voice steady, the way I did in work presentations when the stakes were high and the room was skeptical, calm, factual, unshakable. I need to clarify some things about what my mother just said. Kira, my mother reached for my arm. I stepped back. My parents did not move in with my permission. I came home from work on Friday afternoon and found them already there. My walls had been repainted. My furniture had been replaced with theirs. My personal belongings, including 200 books I've spent years collecting, had been packed into boxes and left in the building's public hallway. Silence. Complete, ringing silence. That's not true. My mother's voice had gone shrill. I called you. I told you we were coming. You told me you sold the house. You never asked if you could move into mine. I'm your mother. I don't need to ask. I let those words hang in the air. Let everyone hear them. Aunt Diane shifted uncomfortably. Marlene, you didn't actually just move in without asking? Of course I asked. She's twisting everything. I have the text messages. I pulled out my phone. Every conversation we've had for the past month. Not once did you ask if you could live with me. Not once did I say yes. Uncle Robert cleared his throat. Now let's not make this bigger than it needs to be. I'm sure it was just a misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding. I looked at my uncle, then at the rest of the room. My parents have $285,000 from selling their house. They chose to move into my one-bedroom apartment without asking, and they expected me to sleep on the couch. The murmurs started then, confused, uncomfortable. The first cracks in my mother's carefully constructed narrative. You're lying. My mother's face had gone red. You're making things up to hurt me. After everything I've done for you. I'm not lying, and I have proof. I opened my phone to the screenshot I'd saved. The email from Highland Property Management, timestamp clearly visible, 8:47 p.m., Friday, March 15th. This is the confirmation email from my landlord. I held the phone up so the room could see. I terminated my lease on Friday evening. The apartment my parents moved into? It's no longer mine. As of tomorrow at 5 p.m., no one has the right to be there. My mother's face went white. You? What? I invoked the early termination clause in my rental agreement. Section 12.3. I paid a penalty of $2,100 and I'm required to vacate by tomorrow evening. You can't do that. My father stepped forward, his voice rising. That's our home now. It was never your home. It was my apartment, on my lease, paid for with my money, and I chose to end that lease. But where are we supposed to go? My mother's voice cracked. You're throwing us out on the street? I'm not throwing you anywhere. You have $285,000. You can rent an apartment anywhere in Denver. You can buy a condo. You have options. I put my phone away. You just didn't want to use your own money when you could use mine. Aunt Patricia spoke up, her voice hesitant. Marlene, is that true? You have that much money saved? My mother didn't answer. Her silence was answer enough. Uncle Robert whistled low. $285,000 and you moved into your daughter's one bedroom? Made her sleep on the couch? The room's sympathy was shifting. I could feel it like a tide changing direction. My father's face had gone from pale to purple. You ungrateful! He stepped toward me, finger raised. We gave you everything, everything, and this is how you repay us? You gave me a childhood. I'm grateful for that. But I'm 32 years old, and I've been supporting myself for a decade. I don't owe you my apartment. We're your parents. And I'm your daughter, not your retirement plan. My mother was crying now, real tears this time, not the performative kind. Where are we supposed to go? We gave up our house. We have nowhere to live. You have money, Mom. More money than most people will ever see. You can rent a place tomorrow. You can stay in a hotel tonight. I kept my voice level, refusing to let her tears move me. What you can't do is move into my home without asking and expect me to be grateful. But we're family. Family asks. Family respects boundaries. Family doesn't pack up someone's belongings and leave them in a hallway. Cousin Michelle spoke up from the corner. Wait, they really put your stuff in the hallway? Like the public hallway? 3 boxes of books. Anyone walking by could have taken them. The murmurs grew louder. I saw heads shaking, saw the looks being exchanged. My mother's narrative was crumbling, and she knew it. This isn't fair, she whispered. We just wanted to be close to you. No, Mom. You wanted free rent. You wanted to control my space, my life, my choices. That's not love. That's not family. That's something else entirely. I turned to face the room. My aunts, my uncles, my cousins, my brother still standing silent by the kitchen door. I'm not a bad daughter for having boundaries, and I won't apologize for protecting them. Enough. The voice was quiet, but it cut through the chaos like a blade. Everyone turned toward the corner armchair where Grandma Ruth had been sitting, watching, saying nothing. She rose slowly, her 78 years evident in the careful way she moved, but her eyes were sharp and clear. Marlene, Douglas, come here. My parents approached her like children called to the principal's office. My mother was still crying. My father's face was a mask of wounded pride. Grandma Ruth looked at them for a long moment. Then she spoke. I raised you, Marlene. I know who you are, and I know when you're telling the truth and when you're not. She turned to my father. Douglas, you've always followed wherever Marlene led. That's your choice. But it doesn't make it right. Mama, my mother started. Hush. Grandma Ruth's voice was iron. I'm not finished. She turned to face the room, her gaze sweeping across the assembled family. My granddaughter did nothing wrong. She built a life for herself. She paid her own way. And when her parents tried to take that from her, without asking, without permission, she protected herself. She looked directly at my mother. That's not disrespect. That's dignity. But she's throwing us out. She's not throwing you anywhere. You have money. You have options. You chose to take advantage of your daughter instead of using them. Grandma Ruth shook her head slowly. I'm ashamed of you, Marlene. I didn't raise you to be this person. The room was silent. My mother's tears had stopped, replaced by something that looked almost like shock. Grandma Ruth turned to me. Her eyes softened. Kira, you did the right thing. Don't let anyone tell you different. I felt tears prick at my own eyes. Thank you, Grandma. Now, she looked around the room. I believe there was supposed to be barbecue. Okay, I have to pause here and ask. Do you think Kira did the right thing? Drop yes or no in the comments and tell me why. And if you're enjoying this story, hit that like button. It really helps more people find these videos. Now let's see what happened after the family gathering. I left Brandon's house 30 minutes later. The gathering had fractured after Grandma Ruth's pronouncement. Some relatives clustered around my parents, offering awkward comfort. Others found excuses to check on the barbecue, refill drinks, examine the backyard landscaping, anything to escape the tension. I said my goodbyes to the cousins who would meet my eyes, hugged Grandma Ruth one more time, and walked out the front door. My mother caught me on the porch. Kira, wait. I turned. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. The confident woman who'd announced her triumph to the room was gone, replaced by someone older, more fragile. Please, she said. We can work this out. We can… Work what out, Mom? We'll find our own place. We'll pay rent. Just don't shut us out. I'm not shutting you out. I'm setting boundaries. What's the difference? I thought about how to explain something I was only beginning to understand myself. The difference is that I still love you. I just can't let you control me anymore. I took a breath. When you can respect that, when you can see me as an adult with my own life and my own choices, We can talk. But until then, I need space. How much space? I don't know yet. Brandon appeared in the doorway behind our mother. He didn't say anything, but he met my eyes and nodded once. A small acknowledgement. Maybe the beginning of understanding. I have to go, I said. I have an apartment to move out of. I walked to my car without looking back. I didn't let myself cry until I was 3 blocks away, safely out of sight. But even through the tears, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. Monday morning, 10 a.m. My last visit to Unit 4B. Elena came with me. We brought boxes, tape, and her SUV. The hallway was quiet. Most of my neighbors were at work, living their normal Monday lives. I unlocked the door for the final time. The apartment was empty. Not just of my parents' furniture, of everything. The walls were still beige, the paint smell faded but present, but the leather sectional was gone. The bread maker, the percolator, the Harvest Gold mixer. Even the curtains they'd hung had been removed. On the kitchen counter sat a single piece of paper. My mother's handwriting. We took our things. We're staying at a hotel until we find a place. I hope you're happy. I folded the note and put it in my pocket. Well, Elena said, looking around, that's something. It's something. We spent 2 hours going through what remained. My furniture was gone. Sold or donated, I'd never know. But they'd left the boxes of my belongings, stacked neatly in the corner of the empty bedroom. My books, my desk items, my photos and keepsakes. I loaded everything into Elena's SUV. At 4:30, Marcus met me in the lobby. All set? He asked. All set. I handed over my keys, both of them, the original and the copy I'd given my mother 8 months ago. Thanks for everything, Marcus. You made this easier than it could have been. You were a good tenant, Kira. I hope things work out. I looked back at the building one more time. 3rd floor, corner unit. The windows I'd looked out every morning while drinking my coffee. Goodbye, 4B, I said quietly. Then I got in my car and drove toward my new life. The studio in Reno was smaller than my old place by 150 square feet. I loved it immediately. Tuesday afternoon, Elena helped me carry boxes up 3 flights of stairs. The building didn't have an elevator, a fact I'd somehow missed during my frantic online search, but the exercise felt appropriate, earning my space one step at a time. The apartment had exposed brick on one wall and a window that faced a mural of wildflowers, painted across the side of the building next door. The kitchen was tiny, barely room for one person to stand. The bathroom was smaller than some closets I'd seen, but it was mine, completely, entirely, legally mine. Where do you want the books? Elena asked, setting down a box with a grunt. Against that wall. I pointed to the brick. I'm going to build shelves. You know how to build shelves? I'll learn. We worked until sunset, unpacking boxes, arranging furniture, the few pieces I'd managed to salvage or buy secondhand over the weekend. A bed frame from a thrift store, a desk from a neighbor who was moving, a couch that Elena's friend was getting rid of. Nothing matched, nothing was expensive. Everything was chosen by me. At 7, Elena left with a hug and a promise to check in tomorrow. I stood alone in my new apartment, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes and mismatched furniture, and felt something I hadn't felt in days. Peace. I made my bed with sheets I'd bought that morning. I hung my grandmother's watch on a nail by the door. I arranged my books on the floor, waiting for the shelves I'd build. Then I sat on my new old couch and looked around at my 500 square feet of freedom. No one had a key to this place. No one but me. The updates came through Brandon. 1 week after the family gathering, he called with news. Our parents had found an apartment in Aurora, a suburb about 20 minutes east of Denver. 2 bedrooms, $1,400 a month. They'd signed a year lease. They're using the house money? I asked. Yeah, Mom's not happy about it, but... He trailed off. But they don't have a choice. Pretty much. I waited for the guilt to hit. The familiar weight of having disappointed my parents, of having failed to be the daughter they wanted. It didn't come. How are they doing? Dad's okay. He's already talking about finding a part-time job, something to keep busy. Mom's, Brandon sighed. Mom's telling everyone who'll listen that you abandoned them. Of course she is. Grandma Ruth shut her down pretty hard at Sunday dinner, told her to stop playing the victim and take responsibility for what she did. I smiled at that. Grandma Ruth had always been the one person in the family who saw through the performances. What about the rest of the family? Split. Aunt Diane and Uncle Robert are on Mom's side. They think you were too harsh, but Aunt Patricia gets it. She said she would have done the same thing. He paused. Michelle asked me to give you her number. She wants to have coffee sometime. Michelle? She said she's been dealing with some stuff with her mom, too. Thought you might understand. I thought about my cousin, always quiet at family gatherings, always the first to offer to help in the kitchen. Maybe we had more in common than I'd realized. Tell her I'd like that. I will. Brandon hesitated. Kira, I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. What Mom was doing. I should have listened to you. You're listening now, that counts. 2 weeks later, I had dinner with Brandon and Sarah. We met at a Thai restaurant halfway between our neighborhoods, neutral territory. No family baggage attached to the walls. Sarah ordered for the table, while Brandon and I navigated the strange new landscape of our relationship. I've been thinking about what happened, he said, pushing pad thai around his plate. About how I just believed Mom, without questioning it. You've always believed her. We both did. Yeah, but you stopped. You saw through it. He looked up at me. When did that happen? I thought about it. Honestly, when I saw my books in boxes in the hallway, that was the moment I realized she didn't see me as a person. She saw me as an extension of herself, someone who existed to meet her needs. That's heavy. It's also true. Sarah reached over and squeezed Brandon's hand. Your mom called last week. She wanted us to talk to Kira, convince her to apologize. What did you say? I said Kira didn't do anything wrong, and if anyone should apologize, it's them. Sarah smiled. Your mother hung up on me. I'm sorry. Don't be. I've been waiting 5 years to say that. Brandon laughed. A real laugh, surprised out of him. Sarah never liked Mom's visits. Your mother rearranged my spice cabinet 3 times, by expiration date. Sarah shook her head. Who organizes spices by expiration date? I found myself laughing too. It felt strange, laughing about my mother with people who understood. I want us to be closer, Brandon said. You and me. I know I've been the good son for too long, but you're my sister. That should matter more than keeping Mom happy. It does matter. It always has. So, dinner once a month? Just us? I smiled. I'd like that. The call came 3 weeks after everything fell apart. I was sitting at my new desk, the second-hand one, positioned by the window with the wildflower mural view, when my mother's name appeared on my screen. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Hello, Mom. Kira. Her voice was carefully controlled. I think we need to talk. Okay. Your father and I are settled now. We have an apartment. It's not what we wanted, but we're making do. A pause, loaded with unspoken accusations. I've had time to think about what happened. And? I think you overreacted. We were trying to help you, and you threw it back in our faces. But I'm willing to forgive you if you're willing to apologize. I closed my eyes, even now after everything, she couldn't see it. Mom, I'm not going to apologize for having boundaries. Boundaries. She said the word like it was obscene. That's what you call abandoning your parents? I didn't abandon you. I refused to let you take over my life. We're your family. Family doesn't have boundaries. Every healthy relationship has boundaries. That's what makes them healthy. So now I'm unhealthy? Is that what you're saying? I'm saying that moving into my apartment without permission, painting over my walls, packing up my belongings, and expecting me to sleep on my own couch, that wasn't okay. And until you can acknowledge that, I need distance. Distance, her voice cracked, from your own mother. I love you, Mom, but I also love myself, and right now those two things are in conflict. You're breaking my heart. I'm protecting mine. A long silence. Then, I don't know who you've become. I've become someone with self-respect. Goodbye, Mom. I hung up before she could respond. The ripples spread outward. In the weeks that followed, I learned who my real allies were. Grandma Ruth called every Sunday, her voice warm and steady across the phone line. You're doing the right thing, she'd say. Don't let anyone tell you different. Cousin Michelle and I met for coffee twice. She was dealing with her own mother, Aunt Diane, who had similar tendencies toward control disguised as concern. I never knew anyone else felt this way, she told me. I thought I was the only one. You're not, I said. You're really not. At work, things shifted too. My manager noticed the change in me. Not the circumstances, which I kept private, but the effect. You seem more focused, she said during my quarterly review. More confident. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. 2 weeks later, I was promoted to Senior Analyst 2, an 8% raise, a small office with a door that closed. I called Elena with the news. Boundaries are good for your career, she laughed. Who knew? The family remained divided. Aunt Diane and Uncle Robert still sided with my mother, still believed I'd been too harsh. But Aunt Patricia sent me a card with a gift certificate to a bookstore. For the collection, she wrote. Build it back better. And my parents? They stayed in their Aurora apartment. My father found a part-time job at a hardware store, something to fill his days. My mother, according to Brandon, spent most of her time complaining to anyone who would listen about her ungrateful daughter. I didn't hear from her again for 2 months. That was okay. Some distances are necessary, some silences are healing. I was learning that protecting yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. 3 months later, my studio apartment finally felt like home. I'd built the bookshelves myself, watched YouTube tutorials until 2 in the morning, made 3 trips to the hardware store, and ended up with something slightly crooked but entirely functional. My 203 books lined the brick wall, organized the way I wanted them, by color, creating a rainbow that made me smile every time I looked at it. My routine had settled into something sustainable. Morning runs through the Rhino Arts District, past murals and coffee shops and galleries. Work that challenged me without consuming me. Dinners with Brandon and Sarah once a month. Sunday calls with Grandma Ruth. Occasional coffee dates with Michelle, who was slowly building her own boundaries with Aunt Diane. I'd even started dating again. Nothing serious yet. Just coffee with a software developer named Marcus. Different Marcus, no relation to my former building manager, who made me laugh and didn't seem threatened by a woman who knew her own mind. The contact with my parents had settled into something manageable. A phone call every 2 weeks, carefully surface level. How's the weather in Aurora? Fine. How's work? Fine. No deep conversations, no guilt trips, no expectations. My mother still didn't understand. Maybe she never would. But I'd stopped needing her to. I was sitting by my window one Saturday morning, coffee in hand, watching the light change across the wildflower mural, when I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. Not at my parents, not at myself, not at the situation that had forced me to make impossible choices. I was just free. Free to build a life on my own terms. Free to love my family without losing myself. Free to be Kira Appleton, 32 years old, finally at home in her own skin. If you'd asked me a year ago what family meant, I would have said sacrifice. I would have said putting others first, always. I would have said that good daughters don't have boundaries, they have obligations. I was wrong. Family isn't about erasing yourself to make others comfortable. It's not about accepting mistreatment because the person hurting you shares your DNA. It's not about sleeping on your own couch while someone else takes your bed and calls it love. Real family, the kind worth having, is built on respect. On seeing each other as separate people with separate needs. On asking instead of assuming. On accepting no as a complete sentence. I learned 3 things from what happened with my parents. First, boundaries aren't walls, they're doors. You get to decide who comes in and under what conditions. That's not selfish, that's healthy. Second, you can love someone and still recognize that they're hurting you. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive. Acknowledging the harm doesn't erase the love, it just means you're being honest about both. Third, you can't change other people. You can only change how you respond to them. My mother may never understand why I did what I did. She may go to her grave believing I abandoned her, but her understanding isn't required for my healing. I don't regret the phone call to Marcus. I don't regret walking out of that apartment with my books and boxes. I don't regret standing in Brandon's living room and telling the truth in front of 18 relatives. I only regret not doing it sooner. If you're watching this and you see yourself in my story, if you're sleeping on a metaphorical couch in your own life, I want you to know something. You deserve better, and you're allowed to claim it. So that's my story. I gave my parents a key for emergencies, and they used it to try to take over my life. I made one phone call and took it all back. Some people will watch this and think I was cruel, that I should have talked it out, compromised, found a way to make everyone happy. But here's the thing about boundaries. They only work if you're willing to enforce them. And sometimes, enforcement looks like walking away. My parents have their apartment now. They're fine. They have money, they have each other, they have a life that doesn't depend on controlling mine. That's not cruelty. That's reality. And me? I have a studio apartment with crooked bookshelves and a view of wildflowers. I have a brother who's learning to see me as a person instead of a peacekeeper. I have a grandmother who calls every Sunday to tell me she's proud. I have a career that's growing, friendships that matter, and a future I'm building with my own hands. Most importantly, I have myself. The version of me that knows her worth and isn't afraid to protect it. If you're watching this, and you're dealing with family members who don't respect your boundaries, who take without asking, who guilt without listening, who love you in ways that feel more like control, I want you to know you're not alone. And you're not wrong for wanting something different. You can love your family and still protect yourself. You can set boundaries without being a bad person. You can choose yourself and still be worthy of love. That's not selfishness, that's survival. And sometimes it's the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and for them. Thanks for listening to my story. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next one. Drop a comment below telling me, have you ever had to set a hard boundary with someone you love? I read every comment, and I'd love to hear your experience. And if you want more stories about family, boundaries, and finding your voice, check out the video linked in the description. I'll see you in the next one.